Hello all, Rick here with a quick video on the phaser emitters and how they have varied in time in Starfleet. Ship-mounted phaser emitters have come in several flavours in Star Trek but are all based on the same technology. I've already covered the reason for their prevalence in Starfleet and what exactly phasers are, but in brief, a phaser beam is a charged stream of Nadian particles in a phased state, and Starfleet prefers this to the simpler disruptor systems because it offers greater versatility. Such mounted phaser technology began with the phase cannons in the 2150s, equipped to their first deep space vessels, and over the next 150 years or so the technology never really changed, just grew more refined and powerful. The cannons gave way to turrets and the more general term of banks by the mid-23rd century, and operated in a multitude of firing modes. By this time, a phaser bank consisted of two ball cannons that operated in unison. These were placed tactically around the vessel at points to provide coverage, generally around the saucer section, then on the engineering hull, sometimes the pylons, but rarely the nacelles. Probably because you do not want such high energy systems running along the length of a warp nacelle, at a guess. These two emitters were placed generally in a square bracket and were readily identifiable on most ships, although vessels like the Constitution class had them mounted just above the sensor dome and were less obvious, at least in one iteration of their refits. They could fire both bolts of phaser energy and continual streams of lancing particles, both being used on different ships at different times. The colour of phasers also has changed with time, presumably varying with something like the frequency, from red, orange to blue to nearly pure white. In the 24th century, and moving forwards, Starfleet adopted the phaser strip as its go-to armament for starships, replacing the previous system of phaser banks. We do not have an exact canon date for the first phaser strips equipped on starships, but we can see that the Ambassador class was equipped with them around its saucer section. Such a vessel, the Enterprise NCC 1701C, was lost in 2344, but the class was apocryphally described as entering service in the 2320s. The ships preceding this, like the Excelsior and Constitution classes, both featured turrets, and the former was introduced around the 2290s, suggesting the switchover occurred around the turn of the century, or a decade or two later. Additionally, the Constellation class vessels like the USS Stargazer NCC 2893 were still equipped with the 23rd century style phaser bank emitters. These banks are completely still serviceable, and newer versions are still made and outfitted to ships, especially smaller craft like shuttles and runabouts. Additionally, the standard phaser bank would go on to be the base for the pulse phaser cannons seen on the Defiant. I would say that the systems each have their benefits, but honestly, the phaser strip generally outplays the standard banks in pretty much every field. The biggest advantage of the strip is that it offers a wider field of fire, covering greater areas and leaving fewer blind spots than a setup of turrets would. The disadvantage is that it takes more time to install, and this is more integrated than a bank, which could be pulled out and replaced with ease. There's a lot more involved with a phaser array or strip. The strip works as a line of emitters that are all linked together and can transfer their charge to the adjacent emitter, adding to the power as it coalesces along the length of the array until it reaches an optimal targeting position. It's then released and channeled towards the target in a beam. Each emitter in sequence is capable of firing independently too, but this would be at a much lower yield than a charged beam. A potential disadvantage of the phaser strip was that they were far more visible when they were about to be fired, as you could see the energy run along the strip. but that's a minor weakness, considering the build-up is detected in advance by sensor systems anyway. The line of emitters being damaged is generally also not enough to incapacitate them totally either, although a damaged part of the array would no longer convect a charge. The phaser strip is still a standard armament now on most vessels, and they come in several types derived from the output, from the Type 4, the earliest models, to the Type 12, which were seeing implementation around the turn of the 25th century. Suffice to say, they've become an iconic loadout for a Federation vessel, while other powers in the galaxy still prefer cannons or turrets. Starfleet is continuing to pioneer its phaser array strip, although they are always fielding new ideas. Thanks for watching this quick video on phaser strips. I've been Rick, and I'll see you next time for another one. Thanks again, and goodbye. I'm not sorry.